Hello students, welcome to the lecture on export and import, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand about motivation for export, discuss about India's increasing foreign trade, understand the export, explain the merchandise trade, discuss the imports. Let's start with the concept of export and import. Export is the part of also known as invisible trade, is basically associated with the person's own skill and knowledge, is what is sold rather than a piece of software or books. Invisible trade is composed of international trade that does not involve the transfer of goods or tangible objects, which mostly include service sectors like banking, advertising, copyrights, insurance, consultancy, etc. Invisible export, invisible imports and invisible exports. Since nothing tangible is transferred, the importer is defined as the person, group or country that receives the service. The exporter is defined as the supplier of the service. The net total of a country's invisible imports and invisible exports is called the invisible balance of trade and is a part of the country's balance of trade. For countries that rely on service exports or on tourism, the invisible balance is particularly important. According to the 2010 data of the Federation of Indian Export Organization (FIEO), India's share in global trade in services was about 1.3%. India's share of consultancy export is about 0.5% of global trade in services government initiatives. In the recent years, the government of India has taken some important steps for the improvement of service-based export. The Foreign Trade Policy 2004-9 is one of them, which has announced the settings up of Services Export Promotion Council for promoting the Indian service sector in the foreign market. Government of India has also introduced Market Development Assistant (MDA), Market Access Initiative (MAI) scheme, Proactive EXIM policy and EXIM bank schemes.
So what exactly are imports and exports? Well, let's focus on imports to begin with. They are demand for goods that are from outside of the UK. So whatever country you're in, it's demand for goods that come from outside of that country. Now in the UK, our three biggest imports are from Germany, the US and China. Those are the countries that we import from the most. What you may not know is that 60% of everything we import is manufactured goods. It's not raw materials, it's goods that have already been made that we're going to take and then sell on to other people. In terms of our exports, a definition is that an export is demand for UK goods in other countries. So whatever country you're in, it's demand for your products in other countries. So what exactly do we export? We've already spoken about films and TV, but they're not our biggest things. Our biggest exports in the UK are guns, bullets, bombs and drugs. Basically, it's like our country's run by 50 Cent.
G-Unit in the house, what? G-Unit in the house, what? G-Unit in the house, what? Next.
We actually do import a lot, as we know, from America. As I said, they're one of our three biggest countries we import from. Over the years, we've imported stuff such as fast food restaurants, coffee shops, and morbid obesity. Some things like will.i.am we imported a long time ago, and we've been trying to give back for ages, but they don't seem to be very interested.
Let us now discuss the motivations for export. There are some basic economic reasons which might influence a firm decision regarding export business. Relative profitability. The rate of profit to be earned from export business may be higher than the corresponding rate on the domestic sales. Insufficiency of domestic demand. The level of domestic demand may be sufficient for utilizing the installed capacity in full. Export business offers a suitable mechanism for utilizing the unused capacity. This will reduce costs and improve the overall profitability of the firm. Recession in the domestic market often serves as a stimulus to export ventures, reducing business risk. When a firm is selling in a number of markets, the downward fluctuation in sales in one market, which may be the domestic market, may be fully or partly counterbalanced by a rise in the sales in other markets. Secondly, geographic diversification also provides some momentum to growth in as much as a single or few markets will have only limited absorptive capacity. Legal restriction. Government may impose certain restriction on further growth and capacity expansion of some firms within the domestic market in order to achieve certain social objectives, but there may not be any such restriction if the additional capacity is utilized for exports. Then the firm may be tempted to export its products abroad, obtaining imported inputs. Nations have to pay for imports of materials, technology or processes not available within their national boundaries. Governments therefore may be compelled to impose export obligation on the firms, especially those in need of imported inputs. In other words, in order to import, the firms will have to export. Social responsibility. Sometimes businessmen themselves feel a sense of responsibility and contribute towards the national exchequer by increasing their exports. They also build up their image in domestic marketing by their export activities. They also look at exporting to attain status and prestige. Increased productivity. Increased productivity is necessary for ultimate survival of a firm. This will lead the firm to increase production and then move to export business. To meet the increased cost of research and development, larger markets become a necessity and exports become unavoidable. Technological improvement. Entry to export market may enable a firm to pick up new produce ideas and to add to product line to improve its product, reduce cost and discover new application for its product.
To explain why countries trade, we must look at a little economic theory.
The first concept we'll consider is called the theory of absolute advantage. If a country has the absolute advantage in the production of a good or service, it means it's the most efficient producer of that product. In other words, if all countries use the same inputs in their production process, this country would be able to make more, better quality products than all the others. Let's construct a simplified theoretical example to illustrate the point.
Imagine for a moment that we live in a world where there are only two countries, South Africa and Japan. Now, both countries have differing capabilities to produce two products, wheat and DVDs. Now, over a certain time period, South Africa can either produce 55 bags of wheat or 11 DVDs using all their resources. Japan, on the other hand, can either produce 18 bags of wheat or 72 DVDs using all the available inputs that they have. So, knowing that each country must choose how to allocate its resources between the production of these two goods, does it make sense for South Africa to produce any DVDs?
The answer is no. Japan is obviously much more efficient in the production of DVDs than South Africa, while South Africa is much more efficient in the production of wheat than Japan. But both countries need both products, so it makes sense for South Africa to provide Japan with South African grown wheat in exchange for DVDs made in Japan.
If each country concentrates on producing what it's naturally good at, if they specialise in that good, both countries can then trade with each other and end up with more of both products than if they tried to produce it all themselves. The consumers in both countries also benefit because they will be buying products made by the most efficient producer.
And according to the economic theory, it means that the price paid for these products should be the cheapest. Why? Well, because the producers making the two products are the most efficient at it and can make more of the product for less than their competitors. Remember that as a consumer, you will not buy the same product from a seller who's more expensive. So the economic principle of absolute advantage is that you should specialize in the production of something that you're good at making. You will be efficient in the production of that good or service, and the price you sell at will be the most competitive. Now, why is this considered so important in economics?
Well, remember, economics is all about satisfying unlimited wants and needs. How can we get all of the things we want with such limited resources, resources we really can't afford to waste through inefficient production.
Okay, let's try and take the theory a bit further. According to this new table, we assume that South Africa has an absolute advantage with both products. It can efficiently produce either wheat or DVDs. Looking at this new data, it would seem that there is no longer any reason for trade between these two countries. But this is not quite true. Let's see why.
Remember that each country must decide how to allocate its resources. In a simplified example, we'll say that if South Africa concentrates all of its resources on DVD production, it can make 8 DVDs. But this means losing out on the wheat. And if they focus all their efforts on wheat production, they can produce 40 bags, while sacrificing any DVD production. The best way to help South Africa decide how to allocate resources is to calculate how much it costs to make one DVD. Comparatively, how much wheat does South Africa have to give up to make one DVD? It's not too tricky. Divide 40 by 8, which gives us 5. So for each DVD we produce, we could have grown 5 bags of wheat. In other words, each DVD we make costs South Africa 5 bags of wheat. Now, over in Japan, if they choose to produce 4 DVDs, they can't produce any wheat because of their limited resources. And if they focus on just producing the 8 bags of wheat, there's nothing left for DVD production. Doing the maths, 8 divided by 4, we can see that it will cost Japan 2 bags of wheat to make one DVD. So, comparing the cost of production in both countries, South Africa has to give up 5 bags of wheat for each DVD it makes, while in Japan it only costs 2 bags of wheat to make one DVD.
So DVDs cost more in terms of bags of wheat given up in South Africa than they do in Japan. Or in less clumsy language, it's cheaper for Japan to make DVDs, so Japan should make the DVDs. And it also makes sense that South Africa should produce the wheat. And that's the theory of comparative advantage.
Now moving on to the next topic, we will study about India's increasing foreign trade in detail. Although India has steadily opened up its economy, its tariffs continue to be high when compared with other countries and its investment norms are still restrictive. This leads some to see India as a rapid globalizer, while others still see it as a highly protectionist economy. Till the early 1990s, India was a closed economy. Average tariffs exceeded 200%. Quantitative restrictions on imports were extensive and there was stringent restriction on foreign investment. The country began to cautiously reform in the 1990s, liberalizing only under conditions of extreme necessity. Since that time, trade reforms have produced remarkable results. India's trade to GDP ratio has increased from 15% to 15% of GDP between 1990 and 2005, and the economy is now among the fastest growing in the world. Average non-agriculture tariffs have fallen below 15%. Quantitative restrictions on imports have been eliminated and foreign investment norms have been relaxed for a number of sectors. India, however, retains its right to protect when need arises. Agricultural tariffs average between 30 to 40%. Anti-dumping measures have been liberally used to protect trade, and the country is among the few in the world that continue to ban foreign investment in retail trade. Although this policy has been somewhat relaxed recently, it remains considerably restrictive. Nonetheless, in recent years, the government's stand on trade and investment policy has displayed a marked shift from protecting producers to benefiting consumers. This is reflected in its foreign trade policy for 2004-09, which states that for India to become a major player in world trade, we have also to facilitate those imports which are required to stimulate our economy. Regional and bilateral trade agreements. India has recently signed trade agreements with its neighbors and is seeking new ones with the East Asian countries and the United States. Its regional and bilateral trade agreements or variants of them are at different stages of development. India to Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Trade agreements with Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, China and South Korea. India-Nepal Trade Treaty. Comprehensive Economic Cooperation. agreement with Singapore, framework agreements with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Thailand and Chile, World Bank involvement. As a number of research institutions in the country provide the government with good, just-in-time and low-cost analytical advice on trade-related issues, the World Bank has focused on providing analysis on specialized subjects at the government's request. In the last 3 years, the bank has been working with the Ministry of Commerce in a participatory manner to help the country develop an informed strategy for domestic reform and international negotiation. Given the sensitivity of trade policy and negotiation issues, the bank's role has been confined to providing better information and analysis than was previously available to India's policy makers. World Bank reports. Over the last 2 years, the World Bank has completed 2 reports: Sustaining India's Services Revolution, Access to Foreign Markets, Domestic Reforms and International Negotiation. The study concludes that to sustain the dynamism of India's services sector, the country must address 2 critical challenges: externally, the problem of actual and potential protectionism, and domestically, the persistence of restrictions on trade and investment, as well as weaknesses in the regulatory environment. From competition at home to competing abroad, the case of horticulture in India finds that the competitiveness of India's horticulture sector depends critically on efficient logistic domestic competition and the ability to comply with international health, safety and quality standards. The study is based on primary surveys across 15 Indian states. A third study dealing with barriers to the movement of professionals is under preparation. The bank has also held a number of workshops and conferences with a view to providing different stakeholders with a forum to express their views on trade-related issues. Let's know the meaning of exports. Export marketing means exporting goods to other countries of the world. It involves lengthy procedure and formalities. In export marketing, goods are sent abroad as per the procedure framed by the exporting countries as well as by the importing country. Export marketing is more complicated to domestic marketing due to international restrictions, global competition, lengthy procedures and formalities, and so on. Moreover, when a business crosses the borders of a nation, it becomes infinitely more complex. Along with this, export marketing offers ample opportunities for earning huge profits and valuable foreign exchange. Exports marketing has wider economic significance as it offers various advantages to the national economy. It promotes economic or business industrial development to earn foreign exchange and ensures optimum utilization of available resources. According to B.S. Rathore, export marketing includes the management of marketing activities for products which cross the national boundaries of a country. Export marketing means marketing of goods and services beyond the national boundaries. Features of export marketing. The main important features of export marketing are systematic process. Export marketing is a systematic process of developing and distributing goods and services in overseas markets. The export marketing manager needs to undertake various marketing activities such as marketing research, product design, branding, packaging, pricing, promotion, etc. To undertake the various marketing activities, the export marketing manager should collect the right information from the right source, analyze it properly, and then take systematic export marketing decision. Large-scale operation. Normally, export marketing is undertaken on a large scale. Emphasis is placed on large orders in order to obtain economies in large scale production and distribution of goods. The economies of large scale help the exporter to quote competitive prices in the overseas markets. Exporting goods in small quantities is costly due to heavy transport costs and other formalities. Dominance of multinational corporation. Export marketing is dominated by MNCs from USA, Europe and Japan. They are in a position to develop worldwide contacts through their network and conduct a business operation efficiently and economically. They produce quality goods at low cost and also on massive scale. Customer focus. The focus of export marketing is on the customer. The exporter needs to identify customers' needs and wants and accordingly design and develop products to generate and enhance customer satisfaction. The focus on customer will not only bring in higher sales in the overseas markets, but it will also improve and enhance goodwill of the firm. Trade barriers. Export marketing is not free like internal marketing. There are various trade barriers because of the protective policies of different countries. Tariff and non-tariff barriers are used by countries for restricting import. The export marketing manager must have a good knowledge of trade barriers imposed by importing countries. Trading blocks. Export trade is also affected by trading blocks. Certain nations form trading bloc for their mutual benefit and economic development. The non-members face problems in trading with the members of a trading bloc due to common external barriers. Indian exporters should have a good knowledge of important trading blocs such as NAFTA, European Union and Asian. Three-phase competition. In export markets, exporters have to face three-phase competition, that is competition from the three angles, from the other suppliers of the exporter's country, from the local producer of importing countries and from the exporters of competing nations. Importance of export marketing. Exports are important for all countries, whether developed or underdeveloped. The need, importance, advantages of export marketing can be explained from the viewpoint of a country and that of business organization. Earning foreign exchange. Exports bring valuable foreign exchange to the exporting country, which is mainly required to pay for import of capital goods, raw materials, spares and components, as well as importing advanced technical knowledge. International relations. Almost all countries of the world want to prosper in a peaceful environment. One way to maintain political and cultural ties with other countries is through international trade. Balance of payment. Large-scale exports solve balance of payment problem and enable countries to have favorable balance of payment position. The deficit in the balance of trade and balance of payments can be removed through large-scale exports. Reputation in the world. A country which is foremost in the field of exports commands a lot of respect, goodwill and reputation from other countries. For example, Japan commands international reputation due to its high-quality products in the export markets. Employment opportunities. Export trade calls for more production. More production opens the doors for more employment. Opportunities are not only in export sector but also in elite sector like banking, insurance, etc. Promoting economic development. Exports are needed for promoting economic and industrial development. The business grows rapidly if it has access to international markets. Large-scale exports bring rapid economic development of a nation. Advantages of export marketing at business. Reputation. An organization which undertakes exports can bring fame to its name not only in the export markets but also in the home market. For example, firms like Philips, HLL, Glasso, Sony, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Optimum production. A company can export its excess production after meeting domestic demand. Thus, the production can be carried on up to the optimum production capacity. This will result in economies of large-scale production. Merchandise trade. Here we review India's merchandise trade performance during April to June 2012-13 on the basis of data released by the Directorate General of Commercial Intelligence and Statistics. It also analyzes disaggregated commodity-wise and direction-wise details for the year 2011-12. During of 2012-13, exports stood at $75.2 billion and showed a decline of 1.7% as against an increase of 36.4% during of 2004-12. Significant deceleration in export performance recorded in the second half of 2011-12 continued during of 12-13. Commodity-wise, data on merchandise exports showed that engineering goods, petroleum products, chemicals, textile, gems and jewellery and agriculture products contributed more than 89% of India's exports during 2011-12. While the share of European Union in India's total merchandise exports declined marginally during 2011-12, the same of OPEC countries declined by more than 2 percentage points. India's merchandise trade exports, April to June 2012. India's export growth started moderating in the second half of 2011-12, which turned negative during of 2012-13, reflecting the continued impact of global economic. Commodity-wise and destination-wise export 2011-12. Commodity-wise exports data available up to March 2012 show that the share of manufacturing sector in total merchandise exports declined marginally from 62.9% in 2010-11 to 61.3% in 2011-12. However, the respective share of petroleum products and primary products increased during the period. Within exports of manufacturing sector, the share of engineering goods and textile products declined, while that of chemical and related products improved marginally. Exports of petroleum products grew by 34.0% during 2011 to 12 as against 47.1% during 2010 to 11. Decline in export of iron ore was due to prolonged ban on mining in states namely Karnataka, Orissa and Goa. Furthermore, export duty on iron ore exports was raised twice during 2011 to 12, first in March 2011 and then on December 30, 2011, taking the total duty to 30%. During the 2011 to 12, the share of European Union and OPEC countries in India's export declined as compared to 2010 to 11. However, share of developing countries excluding OPEC developing countries and the US in India's exports was higher during the year. Imports, April to June 2012. During of 2012 to 13, imports at US dollar 115.3 billion registered a decline of 6.1%, 36.3% a year ago. Decline in import growth was primarily led by decline in imports of gold and silver and significantly lower growth in POL, together accounting for 44.1% of total merchandise imports during of 2012 to 13. Import growth of POL decelerated to 5.5% in of 2012 to 13, 52.5% in of 2011 to 12, partly reflecting the moderations in international crude oil prices. Imports. The area in which the imports are almost essential are defense requirements, crude oil, fertilizer, capital goods, industrial inputs like raw materials, components, consumables, spares, etc., import of samples, import of technology, import of drawing and design, import of services, etc. There are many vital areas where there is a need to import capital goods, new as well as second-hand, in order to upgrade our products and services. Further, there is an increase in factor mobility. The various factors of production like raw materials, labor, capital goods, spares, consumables, etc. have become mobile. It is easy to relocate any of these factors from one country to another depending on where they are needed. This gives rise to opportunities where various components of a value chain are completed in different countries. For example, a company in India may buy fabric from China, source design from Italy, labor from Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and arrange to make a garment to be sold in Europe. The advantages of such outsourcing are: there is no need to invest in plant overseas. The risk of asset expropriations are minimized. Risk associated with currency fluctuation are better managed. Control of marketing is retained by the contractor. A product manufactured in the overseas market may be easier to sell, especially to government customer. Lower transport costs. Sometimes lower production costs can be obtained. To sum up, it is not possible to survive without imports when the world is moving so rapidly towards globalization and liberalization. The phenomena of global sourcing at the most competitive cost and the need to increase productivity of the domestic industry through the imports of high technology products has resulted in import liberalization being an imperative tool for economic growth. Indian trade classification of imports. Indian trade classification is a notification issued by the central government. It gives a policy for imports or exports against each entry and also any condition applicable for imports or exports. The special import licenses were valid for import of specified items in the negative list of imports, that is, items that could not be imported freely. These licenses were freely transferable. So the exporters who earned these licenses could earn a premium by selling the licenses to those who wanted to import the items that could not be otherwise imported without a license. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Export is a part of also known as invisible trade, is basically associated with the person's own skill and knowledge is what is sold rather than a piece of software or books. The import policy is assigned at the 8-digit level. The operative part of ITCHS, 6-digit subheadings, which are not split further, are converted into 8 digits by adding 2 zeros at the end. Export business offers a suitable mechanism for utilizing the unused capacity. To undertake the various marketing activities, the export marketing manager collects the right information from the right source. Imports are almost essentials are defense requirements, crude oil, fertilizers, capital goods, industrial inputs like raw materials, components, consumables, spares, etc.